I want to watch some PragerU videos. I haven't checked in on PragerU in a while, and I've realized they've actually released a lot of videos since we've last checked in with them. The first one I wanted to check out was getting politics out of sports. As we all know, there's been a lot of protests in sports. There's been Colin Kaepernick. There's been Olympic protests for a very long period of time. Recently, there's been some protests at the Olympics. These protests in sports happen all over the world for different reasons. They're not just here. They've happened in Syria in 2004 in the northeast of the country. They've happened, of course, in China and Hong Kong. This has had actually repercussions for Hong Kong protesters, as we're going to talk about while we watch this video. And, of course, there's been a lot of conservative punditry that basically amounts to shut up and dribble, descendants of Rush Limbaugh. So, decided I was going to watch this Get Politics Out of Sports video and see what it has to say.
Pro sports has become woke sports, and that's a problem, not just for athletics, but for all of us. Sport has the power to unite people in a way that little else does. It is more powerful than governments in breaking down racial barriers. It laughs in the face of all types of discrimination. Nelson Mandela spoke those words. The Nobel Peace Prize recipient understood the power of sports to bring disparate people together.
Okay, so he says this, but he would also, I know, and I don't think anyone would say that Nelson Mandela would seriously say, hey, Colin Kaepernick, shut up and play football. Hey, Olympic protesters, shut up and do your ball throws or your sprints. Is he legitimately going to make that claim? It is true that sports can unite people and it laughs in the face of racial discrimination. But Nelson Mandela would also say that protest in the sport would also be laughing in the face of racial discrimination, and that people, of course, have a right to protest at sports and should protest at sports. To claim that Nelson Mandela would be against, say, Colin Kaepernick or the Olympic protesters, or to use him as an example when he doesn't believe when you believe and everyone knows it, is absolutely ridiculous. Can we actually look this up? Wait, so this is, wait. The first link, the very first link where they're trying to say, hey, keep your politics out of sports, keep your protests out of sports. Sports were a major weapon against racism. The role of sports in creating change, Nelson Mandela. Let's look at this one. Using sport as a political tool is a whole section here. During apartheid, the ANC was a no-normal sport in an abnormal society. This was adopted by the AOC, FIFA, and common heads of government and a range sport governing body. The UN compiled a register of athletes who competed in South Africa. They exercised moral pressure, and some sports bodies disciplined athletes on the list. In 1986, 32 countries boycotted the Commonwealth Games in Glasgow over UK government's attitude towards sports links with South Africa. High-profile figures, such as Desmond Tutu, as well as many academics, have emphasized the importance of boycott and stigmatizing the end of apartheid. An example of South Africa contradicts the cliche that sports and politics don't mix. And they're using Nelson Mandela, the champion against apartheid, as an example to prop up their, okay, you know what? There's no point in reasoning with PragerU, but it's kind of weird to use this guy as your example.
There is no better example of this than the famous victory of South Africa's mixed-race team in the 1990.
Okay, but what about the boycotts? What about the boycotts? And you want to know something? The mixed-race team was politics. Because the mixed-race team and having that team to a lot of Afrikaners and to a lot of people who propped up apartheid South Africa was an insult to the moral system of the country. That was political.
Rugby World Cup. Mandela's presentation of the Winners' Trophy to team captain Francois Pienaar stands as an iconic symbol of unity in post-apartheid South Africa.
You're saying this is a political statement then?
Sports have served as a powerful racial unifier in America as well. This is not new. It goes back decades. In 1936, the great black sprinter and long jumper Jesse Owens won 4 gold medals at the Berlin Olympics. In 1938, the great black boxer Joe Louis scored a first-round knockout over German heavyweight Max Schmeling.
Here's something we could talk about. a little bit. We're talking about boxers, such, or in this. Do you guys know about the first black heavyweight champion? John Arthur Johnson, also known as Jack Johnson. I love boxing. I love boxing a whole lot. I care a lot about boxing. Jack Johnson was the first black heavyweight champion, and he was a beast, man. He knocked out legend after legend after legend. And each time he'd lock out a legend, there would usually be a race riot afterwards, and he'd get really angry. And Jack Johnson also dated a lot of white women, which also pissed off a lot of people. And it pissed off so many people, and his, as many people said, immoral attitudes and such, eventually meant that he had to basically flee the country to France. And it wasn't until Donald J. Trump's presidency, until this man was actually pardoned. Deontay Wilder, who was heavyweight champion at the time before Tyson Fury unseated him, actually went to Donald J. Trump's, went to his administration, went to the White House, and was there when Jack Johnson was pardoned for his evil crimes of being black and also being good at a sport. Do you think a man that had to face such trials and tribulations, that race riots would occur anytime he won, and he was getting so much shit just for loving who he wanted to love, and some white women, do you think it would be ridiculous for him, man, due to the conditions he faced, to use his platform, which came from him, from Jack Johnson, this amazing fucking boxing champion, using his platform, the only platform he has access to talk about that struggle, to talk about the discrimination he faced? If you're going to talk about boxing as an example of a sport that is more lovely when it's non-political, talk about Joe, and you bring up Joe Louis and Max Schmeling. This was one of the most political boxing matches in history, because Max Schmeling beat Joe Louis, and he was a German during the Nazi regime. The Nazis used Max Schmeling as an example of the racial purity of white Germans. And then Joe Louis came back around, trained, and beat his ass and knocked him out. That's the story of Joe Louis versus Max Schmeling. That is explicitly political. And again, you're using this explicitly political example of sports to talk about how you need to keep sports out of politics. When Joe Louis beat Max Schmeling, there was parades and happy ovations, not just because Joe Louis had beat someone who wasn't an American, but because a black man had beaten somebody who was supposed to be of the master race. This is explicitly political. God, man, I hate when people who don't follow these sports try to use them as examples.
The Owens and Lewis victories punctured Hitler's Aryan superiority myth.
Yes, which is political.
Unified black and white Americans in pride and celebration, and established Owens and Lewis as America's first black national heroes.
But again, that's a great isolated picture to show of the history of boxing. And I'm going to lean into boxing because I don't know anything about track and field, right? But Jack Johnson was threatened with lynchings, threatened with being murdered, was attacked for wanting to date white women, and for beating up white champions. If you look at, who was it? Jack Johnson versus, what was it? It was the Great White Hope. I forgot his name. James Jeffries. That was it. It was James Jeffries. When this happened, riots, race riots everywhere. He was threatened with lynchings just for him daring to be better than a white man. And of course, wanting to date white women. Again, are you saying that this man should just allow this to take place? Should just allow this perpetuation of racism and him to be under threat from lynchings and not use the only platform he has that was made available to him through his impressive stature in boxing and his amazing skills, and not take advantage of that and box his heart out and use that platform to advocate for racial equality? He shouldn't do that. What other option is made available to the man? Oh, sorry, man. I love boxing, and anytime people try to use like boxing as an example of like politics and sports, what about boxing? No, bad example. Bad example.
Jesse Owens and Joe Louis laid the foundation for Brooklyn Dodgers general manager Branch Rickey's partnership with black baseball legend Jackie Robinson to integrate major...
Jackie Robinson. And that's great to integrate the major leagues. And you want to know what? It took a lot to do that. Protest. Political protest. It took a lot of it. It took a lot of fighting and battling to be able to allow him to play with white players and to get anywhere near the pay that white players were getting. It took a lot of political movement. Again, you are not using great examples here to why politics should be out of sports.
Major League Baseball in the late 1940s. That, in turn, inspired Martin Luther King, Rosa Parks, and the civil rights movement of the 1950s. Barack Obama credited Robinson for his political rise. There's a direct line between Jackie Robinson and me standing here, said America's first black president. Obama saw what Mandela saw, how sports transcends all barriers.
Okay, so it's not as simple as just black man succeeded, therefore everything's cool. It was not only that they won at sport, it was the representation of seeing these black voices and black faces succeeding. But then, once they succeed and are given that platform through their success, what you're telling them is to not use that platform, that political platform that they could now make available to themselves to advance their people's interests, their people's rights. It doesn't make sense to me.
When you see this group of folks of different shades coming from different communities and then playing as one team and celebrating each other and being joyous in that, that tells us something about America. Sports, in other words, is the ultimate equalizer. In competition, what matters is winning. That means excellence matters. And both are colorblind. Sports allow us to experience the power of pure meritocracy, the only way to govern sports and the only way to govern life. But now, all this storied history and the positive message of sports are being undone.
It's just really interesting that he didn't include all the examples of black sports stars like Jack Johnson, or examples of exactly how white Americans treated these people and the struggles they had to go through to be treated equally. A lot of it was protest. A lot of it was political. They had to make sports political. Sports had to be political in order for them to change it.
September 2016, NFL quarterback Colin Kaepernick took a knee, that is, refused to stand during the national anthem. His defenders...
Now, can I say something quick? This is something that, wait, let me see. Maybe they include it, and I don't have to say anything.
Say his protest wasn't about the flag, but Kaepernick said otherwise. I am not going to stand up to show pride in a flag for a country that oppresses black people and people of color, he told the press.
Okay, so a lot of people, and I don't think they're about to make this argument, hopefully. A lot of people try to say that this is extremely disrespectful towards veterans. But a lot of people don't remember that Colin Kaepernick's original protest was sitting down during the national anthem. This happened for like 1 or 2 games. And then veterans approached him and had a discussion with him about what is a more respectful way to go forward to protest. And then he was like, okay, a lot of people take a knee during the grave sites of soldiers. So instead, I will respect the soldiers by taking a knee while also protesting a government represented by said flag that is not treating my people equally.
We all know what happened next. Players across the NFL followed Kaepernick's lead, kneeling.
Oh yeah, he also didn't mention when black track and field medal winners raised their fist with a black glove, they were made to give up their medals due to their protesting. Oh yeah, and that was a major movement in the civil rights era. And oh my God, the cherry picking of history here, and even the examples they cherry pick isn't great for his defense.
Locking arms and even raising fists during the national anthem. Then athletes from other sports joined in. Ironically, just as sports has the power to unite, we have discovered it also has equal power to divide.
Okay, Jackie Robinson participating in sport was a divisive issue. Don't pretend that Jackie Robinson just wandered onto the field and everyone was like, yay, black people in sport. That did not happen. He had racial slurs thrown on him. He was threatened with death. That man put his life on the line. Same with Jack Johnson, the black boxer I was bringing up before. Same with basically every black athlete he's brought up to this point. So it's really weird to say, no, now it's divisive. Black people asserting themselves by just their presence in sport was a divisive issue in the examples that you brought up. It's always the participation of minorities in sports and them using their voices in sports and using the platform given to them through their sports prowess has always been a divisive issue. This isn't a new development that just happened when Colin Kaepernick took a knee. This has been the case always in American politics and always in American sports. And this isn't just the case in American sports, by the way. In fact, David seems to be taking the stance of the Chinese Communist Party. I'm not kidding. Here's a great example of it. In Hong Kong, due to the Hong Kong protests, a lot of people, when the Chinese national anthem would start playing, they would boo it. Why? Because they don't like their civil liberties being restricted by the Chinese Communist Party. Do you want to know what China did in response to this? They said, hey guys, sports are supposed to unify people. Sports is trying to bring people together. These ruffians are dividing us. So they moved towards booing the Chinese national anthem. Hong Kong proposed a new law on Friday pushing back mockery of the Chinese national anthem with up to 3 years in jail, mirroring new penalties in mainland China, and raising fresh concerns over the city's promised freedoms. Booing the national anthem has become a common form of political protest at soccer matches. So here's another thing. This isn't just an American concept. Like in America, people just are super duper political in sports. This is international. Hell, I could bring up Syria in 2004 and how the Kurds protested and how they got mowed down for protesting after people tried to make jokes about Saddam Hussein gassing Kurdish people. There's a million different sports-related protests or riots that I can bring up from all across the globe. Yes, sports can unite people, but sports are not free from politics, because politics touches everything, because politics is the way we manage our day-to-day lives. And it was political when Jackie Robinson got involved. It was political when Jack Johnson beat Jeffries. It was political in 1938 in Berlin, and it'll be political in 2016 when Colin Kaepernick took a knee. Now, if any of you thinks about, like, well, maybe this law didn't come into effect, I have bad news for you. It did go into effect. People can go to jail for booing the national anthem, and a Hong Kong crowd booing China's national anthem has sparked police probes. This is just from a few months ago. No, I'm not saying that this guy wants to ban booing the national anthem. But the same party line in China of keep your protests and politics out of sports and use it to divide the country, don't use that political platform, is the same line as PragerU is pushing here. Even if they don't have the same solution, they're still pushing the same line, the party line.
On opening day 2021, Major League Baseball Commissioner Rob Manfred stripped Atlanta of the All-Star game as punishment for Georgia politicians' passage of a voter integrity bill, bowing to the political mob that
He is doing this right now while he cited in his first example Nelson Mandela. Nelson Mandela. Does he not know about the boycott movement of South Africa, and particularly in sports? We just read the passage earlier. Oh my God. He's going to cite people who just completely disagree with him and just not see the irony of it.
cast half of America as racist. The move fractured baseball's fan base.
Yes, because we've never seen baseball's fan base being fractured over race before in this country. Anyway, please bring up Jackie Robinson again.
American sports world, a culture that celebrated victors, colorblindness, and patriotism, has emerged culture that celebrates baseball's fan base. The entire American sports world, a culture that celebrated victors, colorblindness, and patriotism.
Jack Johnson caused a race riot because he beat Jeffries. You were just bringing up Jackie Robinson. What do you mean? How can you use all these examples and then just pretend the racism isn't there? How? My God.
Has immersed itself in victimization and left-wing radicalism.
I don't even need to go through the multiple sports scandals about racism and how black sports players were treated. Hell, this guy on screen now was on Steven Crowder's show and talked about racism he faced while playing college football and his teammates faced while playing college football. Oh my God.
This immersion threatens permanent damage both to American sports and to the larger American culture. Once again, Kaepernick takes the lead. He no longer plays football. He is now a professional influencer. He hawks his political message in partnership with Nike, the $40 billion a year puppet master of American sports.
Puppet master. Okay, got it.
Kaepernick.
Look, if the dude lost his job playing football, and he sacrificed his football career to do this political message, yes, if he's lost that ability to play sports, he's got to find another way to make money. And he's going to make money also spreading the message he cares about. Hell, you are on PragerU right now making money spreading a political message you care about. I am right now on YouTube and Twitch making a lot less money. Please sub and donate. I'd appreciate it. Spreading a political message I care about. You cannot be a political commentator and rag on Colin Kaepernick for making money, spreading a political message he cares about, when you do the exact same thing every fucking day.
LeBron James and Nike's other brand influencers are making millions off amplifying racial wounds. It's a cynical and brilliant business strategy. It explains why pro sports, especially the National Basketball Association, seem more concerned about how they are perceived in China than they are here in America.
In China, what a very, very topical nation to bring up, considering what we brought up to the audience here just a few minutes ago. But I will say, I do agree that China has a lot of very restrictive qualities when it comes to sports and how stuff is portrayed in sports. Definitely when it comes to, say, Hong Kong, and how they got very angry at some NBA people for saying statements about Hong Kong. But you would agree with them. If we were to keep your policy consistent, you would say, well, I mean, it is true that these NBA players and NBA managers did bring up Hong Kong in reference in China, and that is pretty political, and hey, that's a divisive issue in China. So they have every right to restrict the NBA's access to China. I mean, if we were to keep your messaging consistent, we would have to also bring that over there.
China is a huge market. Its 1.4 billion citizens have more sneaker spending power.
Shut the fuck up, Dylan. He's fine. Big endorsements from Nike, still Kaepernick. I never said Kaepernick is poor, but I think football players probably like to play football, and he did sacrifice his football career. And so if he sacrificed his football career to make a political statement, it's not that surprising that a lot of people are like, well, you know what? This was a big thing in the news. If you want to continue to advance your message, we will work with you in doing that. I don't see any problem in that. And plus, hey, man, this is PragerU. I thought you guys loved the free market, baby. He's just taking advantage.
Than America's 333 million. It's simple math. The $8 billion a year NBA is the marketing arm of Nike's $40 billion a year global business. To state it plainly, Nike is driving American sports. That's why team owners, coaches.
It's so weird to see him bring up China when we all know, if we were to ask him about Hong Kong and what China did when it came to Hong Kong protests in the United States, he would take the exact opposite position, as PragerU and PragerU commentators have done in the past, which is the platform he's speaking on.
And players are so willing to call America racist, but remain silent on China's egregious treatment of its minorities and suppression of freedom in Hong Kong.
See? There it is. He's taking the exact contradictory position when it comes to Hong Kong. He takes the exact opposite position on Hong Kong. Wow, I can't believe China is suppressing all this protest and political protest when it comes to Hong Kong. And people, oh, it's so awful. Wait, political protest in American sports? Oh no, that's just divisive. That's divisive. Stop it. You need to stop. Get back in line. Shut up and dribble, quote unquote. But on Hong Kong, nah, please protest. And I'm so angry at China. See, I hold a consistent policy on both. I believe that what China did when it came to the NBA in Hong Kong was horribly messed up, and that people should be able to speak out about Hong Kong's loss of freedoms. And I also hold the position that Colin Kaepernick should be able to take a knee and people should be able to protest in sports in the United States. I don't hold the position of, say, Chinese Communist Party, that people who boo the Chinese national anthem during sports games should be given jail time. And I don't agree with Donald J. Trump that say somebody burning the American flag should get prison time, even if I don't like burning the American flag, because I believe in free speech as a principle.
Ultimately, the fans hold the power. They buy the tickets, the shoes, and the merchandise. Watch what they do. If they accept sports as just another arena to fight political battles.
Because sports has never been that before. What was it? Yeah, please bring up Jackie Robinson, Nelson Mandela. I'll bring up Jack Johnson, Joe Louis beating Max Schmeling. No political battles here.
You'll know dark days are ahead. If they reject it, we'll be headed back to a brighter future.
Hell, many of the politicians PragerU endorses and supports and pushes are the same people talking about boycotting the Olympic Games in China because of Xinjiang. Oh my, I could do this all day. I gotta just end this video before I pop.
I'm Jason Whitlock for Prager University.
Jesus Christ. Anyway, sports is political. Protest in sports has existed in the United States for a very long time, and sports in the United States has had a lot of racial issues that needed protests in order to advance it. Crazy. The hypocrisy when it comes to Hong Kong and our protesters domestically. Just never ends. My God.